it wasn't long after that that the so-called curse of the Hanovers made itself evident. And this was porphyria, not erythropoietic protoporphyria, but porphyria. It's a systemic blood serum disorder. And it manifests itself in ways that are similar to what we think of commonly as madness: incoherence, incontinence, violence, logorrhea, can't stop talking. And but you get paid for it in some circles. and the such. And it came and went in his life. It started out mild, got a little worse, then he'd have a period that was good, and then it'd go back and forth. By the end of the 80s, 1780s, the king's influence, and he'd been a very powerful figure in British government, a Johnsonian, if you will. I mean, what was his name? President Johnson, that kind of Johnsonian power, and it's all gone now by the end of the 80s. He was out of touch. He didn't seem to know what was going on, but talking to the curtains and such. He had violent sprees. There was one occasion I remember vividly. We all saw this. They were at Windsor. The family was there. A good many of the children were there. And he had difficulty that he and the Prince of Wales did not get along. Did I have to tell you that? They didn't get along. And as dinner was concluding, there were some words. I don't remember what the words were, but the king lunged at the Prince of Wales, knocked him out of his chair, threw him on the floor, and tried to kill him. Well, of course, the equerries and footmen dragged them apart, and the prince was saved. But the king had moments that are very violent. So, by 1802, he had been in and out of. He'd been under treatment. They took him into, the treatment was perfectly hideous, but he'd been in a private arrangement, being treated, and he seemed to recover. The public saw him as an ill man put upon by disrespectful sons, so obviously they felt sorry for him. And his popularity was growing. And when he seemed to recover, and this was a great surprise because they were talking about a regency and all that sort of thing in the House of Lords. And suddenly he seemed to have been recovered. And he ordered a celebration, and it took place at St. Paul's, and there he was with the Prince of Wales and the other sons and the daughters and the Queen and everybody huzzawing and waving his hat, and he looked, my God, he's all right. Well, it didn't last long, the great recovery, because by 1811, he had subsided into complete oblivion. He was last seen in Windsor, which they did arrange for him. They padded the walls of his apartment. He was confined to a single area. He was so violent now that his equerries couldn't shave him, and he'd gone blind with cataract. So he was out of it, but he would play on the clavier and sing at the top of his lungs, this blind old man. It wasn't, however, until 10 years later, in 1820, at the age of 82, that his tormented spirit winged its way to eternal freedom.